sent you an email.
Yes, yes, you did.
As you can see on the screen, if you go ahead and pull that up, you have two emails, as you always do. Find whichever one works. We also haven't seen each other in a little while, which I'm sure didn't bum you out at all. Keep that to yourself. Hopefully, you were able to find some time to work on the paper. That was the aim. I know that doesn't work out for everybody. Anyway, what we're doing today, we're in the final push to get these papers done. Your rough drafts are due next time, and I know that's kind of scary, but again, we have a weekend. Like you're leaving, because again, you have a whole weekend, and hopefully we build some momentum today, get you in a good place to make that happen. What we're worried about, we've talked about introductions. Granted, it was a week ago. If you have questions at the end of class, by all means, raise them. But today, we're worried about the body of the paper. What we're looking at, 2 body paragraphs from a student. So of course we need to be respectful like we always are. You guys are good about that. I gotta give you some backstory first because there is no intro because that was not assigned. The case this student is looking at, somewhat famous recent history. I'm bad with dates, so I'm not gonna give you the year because I can't. My brain doesn't do that. But kid, high school wrestler in, I believe, New Jersey. I believe it's New Jersey. Was in a match, and then the ref decided his dreadlocks were like against the rules. And granted, I've never wrestled, but I could for sure see a world where like you can't have long hair because like that you know. So there's probably some kind of rule about something like that. But anyway, the wild part was during the match, like in between or something, they cut his hair to fit the rules. Which is a hell of a thing to do. Like that's a pretty drastic step. And according to the student, some of the stuff they're writing about, people did not take that well. You know, it got to social media, people were like, what the fuck is this? So that's where we're at in terms of background information. Now then, with these body paragraphs, step 1, as always, would be identifying evidence where you see it, and they have a couple pieces in here. Topic sentence, I'm going to go ahead and tell you we don't quite have right now, and that's okay. If we have time at the end, we'll talk about that. But again, I mean this when I say evidence and analysis. That's what we're worried about for this, but for your papers. If you don't have that, fuck the rest of it. I'm going to be as blunt as I can be. The rest of it really doesn't matter without evidence and analysis, okay? So to the best of your ability, identify those and think about what kind of job they're doing. Part of this is going to be, what are we even supposed to do in these papers? I'm not convinced everybody knows that well enough. So we're going to talk about that again today. And that's all I want you to do. Is that good? 2 paragraphs, go ahead and read them both. Go for it. All right. Now, to save us some time, because it is my sincere hope we can do this first thing by this point. I think we can. I've broken up these paragraphs. You go to that next page. Evidence analysis, evidence analysis. I feel pretty good about how I've broken them up. If you want to dispute something, you can. But here's what I'm thinking. In isolating the evidence and the subsequent analysis, what I want to try to do is consider the directives I gave you. What do you think about the evidence they pull? What do you think about what they're doing with that evidence? And we're just going to skip to that. So, to begin with, first paragraph, we quote Chance the Rapper, all right? This is bogus as fuck. I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids. I'm gonna ask you first to do, because you gotta think about quotations. You gotta think about when to quote. When do we quote? Like, why do we do it? I believe we talked about this last time. I don't think I'm making that up. When do we quote? I'll phrase it differently. When do you guys quote? You quote all the time. There's like 4 of them in here, right? When do you guys quote? You must do it for a reason. Tell me about it. Teach me something. Do you not know why? Because that is a problem. It's a problem. Why do you guys take quotations? Why do you put them in your paper? What for?
To add credibility to our argument.
Sure. Having sort of primary evidence, like, that would lend some credibility to your argument, I suppose. But then, of course, you have to make an argument based upon that evidence, right? So, what thinking goes into what evidence you pull? For instance, I mean, again, we can use what we have here. When they quote Chance the Rapper, this is bogus as fuck. I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids. Why are we pulling them? What are we trying to use it for, do you think? Another way to frame this, sometimes you can just translate, like paraphrase the quotation. What is Mr. the Rapper, being an idiot, what's he saying here? I don't think it's a quotation none of us understand. Like, what's he saying? I do feel like that's the easiest question I've ever asked you guys, to be clear.
Okay, we're talking about why he,
No, I'm making it real simple first. Just tell me what he's saying, in your words. This is bogus as fuck. Why are y'all still doing this to kids? Or I can't believe y'all are still. What's he saying?
he's basically talking about the discrimination that we say against, I don't know how to word this.
You can wait. Look, he says, take it sentence by sentence. This is bogus as fuck. What is he saying? In your words. Huh?
Stupid.
This is not cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Second sentence. I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids. What's he saying?
Like, why are they still, but he can't believe that they're still discriminating against
In 2020, whenever this happened, again, I'm bad with years. How is this still going on? Good. All right. So that's the gist of it in terms of paraphrase, right? And we need to consider that. I mean, we can't not think about the message he's after, right? But when you quote for language. You do not only quote for ideas, for information. My question is, that's our information. The information is the paraphrase. This isn't cool. How is this still going on in whatever, current year this happened? Okay. My question, when you look at the analysis, what is our priority? Is it language or is it information? What leads you to say that?
I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of it's more so giving the reaction of how people are, or how people feel about the situation. Because
we can get more specific than people. Whose reaction are we getting here?
we're getting a celebrity.
In the quotation, in the analysis. Read over the analysis now. Whose reaction is that? Kind of two, to be totally technical. But mostly it's whose reaction? It's not a trick question.
The kids.
We describe what we assume the kid's reaction to be, I suppose. I'll give you that. Okay. So still, I'm asking. If you look at that quotation and what we said about it, and then you look at the analysis, what are we using to get to that analysis? Is it the language in the quotation, like how it's phrased, or is it the idea behind the quotation?
The idea?
What leads you to say that?
The second thing you said.
What leads you to say that? I happen to agree. That makes you guys feel better. But the bridge we got to cross is, you can't just give me what I want, which I know that's part of what you guys are always trying to do. We can't just do that. You have to try to see what it is I'm talking about. How do you know? And we're not really using the language from the quotation. We're just talking about the idea in it. How do you know that? if the quotation were phrased how Maya put it, and I'm not going to be able to quote you from memory now, but something like, this is stupid, how is this still happening? You said something, right? Like, okay. Would our analysis be any different? Not really. That's a good test. If you can paraphrase your quotation for the most part, and your analysis doesn't really change, that's probably a bad sign. That's telling you you're not working with the quotation, you're working with the general sense of the quotation. Okay? Doubly worse in this case, I would imagine that the kid wasn't happy and that people were unhappy as a result. Like, if that's all we're going to say about it, we're not really accomplishing much either, right? That's pretty banal. So, one of two things needs to happen here. Either we got to figure out a way to work with the language in the quotation, and I think we might be able to, okay? Or we got to lose it. If you have a quotation, sometimes this happens. It just doesn't work for you for whatever kind of reason. Sometimes you got to lose it, okay? But let's try the first one first. Language now. We understand, again, Chance the Rapper doesn't think this is cool. Can't believe this is still going on. All right, but phrasing, how he puts it. This is bogus as fuck. I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids. Is there any language in there we could dig more into in some kind of a way? I think we have some options.
I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids.
We can talk about that for a second. Okay. Any specific element, like when it comes to the language that you could think about? Take a swing, man. Just take a swing.
My mind just went blank.
Okay.
By language, like, what do you mean? That's what's confusing me.
Let me think of an example. Okay. The first time of the night, I tell my boys to get ready for bed. I'm like, hey guys, you can brush your teeth and you get ready for bed, okay? About the 30th time, I ask them to get ready for bed. Depending on the time of night, it might be something like, hey, go to fucking bed. Those are the same idea. Very different language. Language matters. Your parents say, go to fucking bed. That communicates something else along with the idea. Do you see what I'm saying? So if we're quoting from language, my question is, and again, it may not be the case. We may use door number 2, right? Maybe the language isn't strong enough, maybe we can't work, that's possible. But I want to try door number 1 first. So is there any language here we could try to work with? This is bogus as fuck. I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids.
Bogus as fuck.
Yeah, that
Bogus as fuck feels pretty strong. Yeah? Primarily one word, but I would say there's 2 in there. I think all of us would agree fuck is still pretty strong. That's a good one.
Bogus.
Bogus as well. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about bogus first, because I feel like fuck kind of does a lot of the work for us. This is bogus, he says. What does that even mean?
stupid.
Yeah. But now what we got to think about is, and this is an honest question, is it any different that he says bogus as opposed to stupid? Right? Is it? That's my question. We can also think of some other synonyms, but what do you guys think? When you say this is bogus, I'll cut somebody off.
It seems more aggressive. than,
Okay,
like,
talk to me about that for a second.
It seems more, I feel like if you were to say this is stupid as fuck or whatever,
Mhm.
you saying this is bogus as fuck, it's just, I don't know, it seems more aggressive. I'm trying to figure out what it's more.
That's okay. Oh, look, anytime you're in a place where you're trying to figure out how to say it, that's usually a good sign. Anytime you don't have to do that and you just, chances are good you're not really telling me much, right? You're doing work. Work is hard, right? Let's think, I happen to agree. I think bogus signifies a little stronger. It's got a little more heat to it. The question is why? You know, he could have chosen. I mean, stupid. What? How does he phrase it again? This is wrong, is what he's saying. Yeah. But those words, to me, while they are synonyms in this case, don't register in the same way that bogus does. We've talked about this a little bit, but I may have to remind you of this discussion. What we're doing here, denotatively, the way he's using the word bogus, basically means the same thing as these. That's the dictionary definition, okay? Connotation is what we're interested in. So the association the word has, the sort of hidden meanings the word can have. If somebody says this is bogus as opposed to this is stupid, this is wrong, what's different about it? In the same way I said, hey, you guys need to get ready for bed, or go to fucking bed. Those mean different things, right?
It's more, okay, it's like, I guess it's, okay, they say it's expressing his anger and tiredness, but I feel like when you say something like, this is stupid, whatever, and then saying this is bogus, you can tell that he sounds more, I guess you could say mad.
Okay, no, well, and so what we're trying to now, I think, tie some of their analysis actually to the language. We can start there. We're saying first that this phrasing signifies anger, and it seemed like you were going down on this, and like this idea of being fed up or frustrated or something, right? We have to explain why. We have to try to prove that. That's the beginning of an argument we're making, okay? Why do you guys think that is? What is it about that word that we could argue gets us here?
I feel like it's more sincere.
Why is that? I don't disagree.
No, because it's not. I'm not to say that it's stupid and wrong or elevated language, but it's definitely
Comparatively, I think they
more
are.
informal.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, in much the same way we talked about other texts throughout the semester, right? This is, I'll give you a big word, more colloquial, right? People tend to talk more like this, and it's not like we never use these words, but they feel more elevated, they feel more formal. So the lack of formality here indicates like he really feels this way. And again, it's not to say but this, you feel it more with this word, is our argument. Now we're making an argument. And again, now we're using the quotation rather than kind of talking about it in a general way, okay? And we actually have to start here, I think, to get here. Like, you believe that he's angry as a result of his word choice, okay? We can talk about fuck. It's an adjective in this sense. This is bogus as fuck. Would we talk about it sort of along similar lines to this stuff? Is it different at all? What I mean is, if it only does this too, it's not really worth talking about. Like, we could mention it, but my question is, does it do anything else? Does it add to this discussion in any way, do you think? And I'm honestly asking because I love fuck. It's a great word. It's a great word.
I feel like it does the same thing.
It does. Like, I'm trying to play devil's advocate a little bit. Like, all I'm wondering is, does it contour his message at all? Like, if it was just, this is bogus, I can't believe it, right? This is bogus as fuck, I can't believe y'all. Does it change it even 5%? The as fuck.
I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it adds more aggressiveness to it, like,
Why?
because aggressive word.
When posed this way.
Yeah, like when.
Well, actually, I guess in most ways,
Yeah.
there's really no. Hand me the fucking spoon. Like, it's a pretty aggressive way to ask for a spoon.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like it adds more of the reason of him being fed up and angry about the situation than anything else.
Why does fuck do that? I agree with you that it does. But again, we have to figure out, we have to try to explain what is it about that word? Like, it's something we all take for granted, I think. But it's our job to try to explain this. So, what's so aggressive about fuck like this? Another way to think of it, because you guys may not have all the language for this, we're talking about it as aggressive, because it is, but there's no way to just lead you to this if you don't have the language. What I would wonder, basically, are we reading that aggression as a way to, like, when you say fuck, it's also communicating urgency. Go to fucking bed. I'm saying that at like 9 o'clock. Their bedtime is 8. Go to fucking bed. I yell up the stairs. Last night it happened. My son wanted a Band-Aid. He was fine. But it's urgency. This is bogus. We get all this. I think bogus as fuck still doubles down on all that, but also it's urgent. It's important. And if anything, this helps us talk, like, this maybe gets us to anger. You can say this maybe gets us to fed up. Okay. All that is just the first half. We haven't even talked about, I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids. Right? And we're going to try to do that quickly because I want to talk about the rest. But my point first here is, this is the work we got to be doing. This, I would imagine, is much of the reaction of the people that react. And this is what you could talk about. Why are people feeling this way? Why do they react this way? What does that reaction say about us, right? In terms of our priorities or what have you. I can't believe y'all still doing this to kids. The y'all needs an apostrophe, but that's interesting. Y'all is another colloquialism, right? It's a bit of a southernism that's actually kind of spread. It gets used more and more widely. Where's Chance the Rapper from? Not that it really matters, but is it? I always thought it was Chicago, but I don't actually. I don't know anything. Anyway, my point is, y'all is a colloquialism in the same way this is, but it communicates something totally different, right? So it's still informal, and we can still maybe have a conversation about sincerity, but now the question is, he's being sincere about something else, right? A related idea, but a different one. Also, the way he's using y'all here, he's not including himself in that. That's you all. Can't believe you fucking guys are doing that, right? Like, that's different. So these are ideas we can consider, but again, we can't really consider any of them if we don't use the language. That's what we got to do. All right. Moving on to the second piece of evidence. Alan Monley, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, I believe was the ref that said the kid had to cut his hair, okay? And here's a quotation from the ref, okay? Rules are rules and you have to follow them. This is not a racist issue, it's just an issue that there are rules and regulations regardless of race, gender, etc. Okay. So that's our quotation. I do think there's language in there we could talk about, okay? But let's read over the analysis real quick, see what you guys think. Oh. So the only question I have right now, do we work with the quotation? Do we use it?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, because it was talking about the rules, you have to follow them, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Yeah.
in this quotation, and then they bounced off of it, and they were talking about how Mr. Johnson followed the rules in the match, but he wasn't allowed to wear.
So they, in the first half of their first sentence, they address one thing the quotation says,
Yeah.
and they never mention it again. That's not using a quotation. Good. Look, another test is, do we really lose anything if we just take that quotation out? Not really, right? Some of this could probably end up staying, we might bring it back. But again, for now, if we're gonna quote, we gotta use them. And if you don't use them, again, it's kind of painful at times, you gotta lose them, right? Like that, you can't just have them just to have them. So, we're gonna have this in the background, and again, we're probably gonna bring some of it back in, but for now, let's look at this quotation from the ref. Rules are rules, you have to follow them. This is not a racist issue, it's just an issue that there are rules and regulations, regardless of race, gender, etc. In the same way we talked about the first quotation, is there any language in here we could try to pull? Think about some of the connotations, associated ideas, given how he phrases it, right? Does it matter at all, because context does matter, does it matter at all that he's a ref, the guy saying this? What I mean is, for instance, the first quotation from Chance the Rapper, that's kind of how I picture Chance the Rapper talks. This is bogus as fuck. Like, I can see him saying that. That makes sense. This referee, given what we know about referees, does the quotation make sense for that context? Is that the sort of thing you would expect a guy like that to say? I think so. I point that out to wonder what language is doing that. Like, kind of what I'm saying here is we have one guy who's famous and kind of sums up pretty well, I think, a general response to what happened, okay? We have another guy who's famous now, unfortunately for him, who has a totally other perspective and a totally other response. And we need to talk about it in a similar kind of way, but we have to appreciate that context. So, what language in this quotation, like if I never told you he was a ref, and you looked at this quotation and I was like, oh, by the way, this guy's a referee, you would go, oh yeah. What language?
The rules are rules and you have to follow.
Isn't that exactly what a fucking referee would say? Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Look, I'm a big football fan. College and pro. I watch a lot of it. Every week I'm like, can we get the refs just out of the game? Holy hell, I'm sick of it. My point there is, let's start with the quotation itself. And the phrase, and it's kind of a cliche phrase, yeah? Rules are rules. I'll point out the fact that it's a cliche, because we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, I want you to appreciate, that's a really stupid phrase that we have. Why? Like, this is an unnecessary thing to say, just like that. Why? Here, I'll give you another example that's built the same way. Why would no one ever say that? Why?
Obviously, for your feet.
It's an insane thing to say. Yeah. We know rules are rules, because they're rules. Thanks. But we have that phrase for some reason. My point is, again, denotatively, cliche-wise, which we can talk about in a second, is not doing anything. But the fact that we even have this phrase, that we know it, right, that it's kind of established, means people use it a lot. So there must be something more to it. What idea is he trying to communicate by saying rules are rules? He kind of elaborates on this, but we can do it just with this.
It's kind of saying that more so if you know the rules, then you have to follow them, considering on what they will consider in this situation. He's basically saying that the boy knows the rules of his hair issue or his hair being too long, and that he should have done something about it or something. But then in the analysis, they say that he followed the rules but was denied to wear his cap. So.
The thing I read said they couldn't find a cap that would work according to the rules. I mean, if you were doing this, you'd have to research the thing a little bit. And part of this too, we're missing some of the background information because we don't have the introduction. But I think it's slightly more complicated than that, given the scant research I was able to do before class. But again, that's right now we're just talking about the quotation. That's like related material, you know what I'm saying? You were real close to this. Rules are rules. I said that word so many times it's not making sense now. What is the ref saying about rules?
If you know the rules, then you should follow. Like the rules aren't going to change. If you know them, you should follow them. Basically.
Okay. So one, there's kind of two ideas here. One, rules are final. Can't question them. Can't change them. They are what they are. Okay. He's also addressing something. And in a way, I'm kind of two minds here. In a way, I kind of want Chance the Rapper to have his own paragraph. And I kind of want the ref to have his own paragraph. Because they're pretty different. But putting them in this paragraph allows us to think about a kind of conversation that's going on between the two. Okay? So I'm going to take you back for just a second. I hate the fact that you have to say his whole name. That's honestly what it is. Chance the Rapper. There's no way to shorten it. I can't call him Chance. I don't know him like that. Anyway, this is bogus as fuck. I can't believe y'all are still doing this. We didn't finish it. He's fed up. Fed up with what? We have to identify what he's so frustrated about.
That they ended up cutting the boy's hair.
Why is he frustrated about that? We gotta put language to this.
I think it's a good sentence.
This is bogus. We said this is stupid. This is wrong. Why does he think that? What's wrong about it? Talk to me like I'm dumb.
It's dumb because they didn't let him wear his hair, or considering on the background information that we are missing. We don't
Well,
know
yeah. But
all happened.
let's we can still talk about it. Like, what is wrong about it for Chance the Rapper? He's pointing to something that makes it wrong.
There's a racial assignment.
Huh?
It's like a racially identified identity assigned to it.
Yeah. And so we're real close, but I can't tell you. You guys have to do it. Like, for the sake of our discussion, because I think it's kind of blinding you guys a little bit. I worry you guys are taught that's enough to make an argument. Saying that it's potentially racist is not enough to make an argument. I like John Oliver, but he's kind of wrong about that in this case, in the next paragraph. So we take that out for just a second, okay? What's wrong about it? They ask this kid to cut his hair. Well, they make him. Ask isn't strong enough. They make, if you want to continue in this sport that you've trained for and everything else, you have to cut your hair right now.
Because this kid's like finding it discriminatory.
Yeah, and we know that. We know that. I'm not saying it's not true, but we got to put this aside for a second. I'm saying there's something more central going on that we're getting blinded by whether or not it's racist, okay? What's wrong with making this kid do this thing? They say it's a choice, but I think a lot of the information is kind of saying it's not really much of a choice, right? What's wrong about making this kid do a thing that he probably pretty clearly doesn't want to do? What's wrong about that? makes them feel bad, and all kinds of things. What's wrong about doing that to a kid? Or anybody, for that matter, but especially a kid. Like when you say something's wrong, you're talking about like injustice, right? What's unjust about making this kid cut his hair? Do you think? We're violating something.
Like a human right almost. To like bodily autonomy if we're gonna go that far, but
Okay. So we're talking like on a human level.
yeah.
He happens to be black, so there's a racial element. But I would say it's more foundational than that. He's a human being. Yeah? And we're saying, bodily autonomy is a very fancy way to put it, that we're kind of violating that. By making him do this, we give him a choice. It isn't really a choice. Yes. And when you add the racial element, you can talk about being fed up. It's not just that this happens and he's angry, it's that this has been happening for a really long time. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to borrow that phrase, it's very good. And I would imagine all of us would agree that that's a human right. Black, white, green, it doesn't matter. Like that's a human right. Your body, right? Okay. I say all that to say, I think that can help us think about what the ref says. Rules are rules. Rules are final. Okay. What else is he saying about rules when you phrase it like that? According to his perspective, I'll just go ahead and lead you to here, I guess. What's he saying about the importance of rules? I guess. Huh? Yeah, but I'm gonna give you guys as many hints as I can. If the first half-ish of our paragraph is one position, right? And it's kind of unintentionally on either side of this thing, right? One position is we're basically not acknowledging or we're violating this kid's human rights, okay? The other position, the other side, is this. I think it's summed up pretty well in this, okay? So basically, how does any of this dialogue with that?
It's basically, it's not, okay, well, the rep is basically saying it doesn't matter how you feel or in this situation, what ended up happening, you have to follow the rules.
No, you're okay. Like, so all I would ask, because I'm trying to push you just a little bit further to put it into conversation with that part. If someone doesn't appreciate how you feel, or they maybe in your life at some point you feel like someone has diminished your emotions, right? Something like that. Why does that bother you? Why do we, I think most of us, consider our feelings to be pretty important, right? Like, why? What do they really matter in the grand scheme? What are your emotions to you? Because that's all we're talking about. Like, kid was really upset. We're not even talking about whether or not he should have been. I think most of us agree that it's perfectly fine he was upset. But the story is the kid was really upset. That was enough for people to really care. So they must be important. My question is, what's so important about them? Your emotions. What are they to you? Right now, a lot of you are bored, trying to distract yourselves. Pretty upset you're in class, maybe, you know? What is any of that to you? No offense, I would love for anyone other than Maya to try it, just because I think Alexis is trying, but she's clearly struggling, so. Why are your emotions important? And I'm not saying you can't answer, by the way. I'm just, if anyone else would like to try. I'll ask a more basic question. Are your emotions important to you?
Yeah.
Okay. We did it. Why? Those of you who spoke up spoke really quickly. Why? Why are they important to you? It's a weird thing to consider, right? For you to answer so quickly, I mean, you must have a reason.
I mean, nobody wants to be like sad or wherever. Everybody's up.
Why not?
Because being sad sucks.
It
I mean,
does.
let me think.
But things usually get better if you give them long enough. Hey, have you ever been upset and you had a friend or somebody say some equivalent of, hey man, things will be better tomorrow, plenty of fish in the sea, blah, and you're always in your head throwing up a middle finger like, fuck you. Who says anything like that? That's the worst thing you could say. Why? We're talking about human rights over here. He's a human being, he's a person, right? How do you know you're a person? This whole class is about argument, even arguing things that you take for granted. I would imagine you take for granted the idea that you're a human being. Prove it to me. How do you know? How could you prove you're a human being and not an iguana? I don't know. Prove it to me. Explain it to me.
Maybe the way we react to things, or
Like what? Iguanas react. They like heat,
Well,
they don't
we
like
can
cold. What's that?
We can talk. Like we
Have
actually.
you tried talking to most iguanas?
Okay, but like we can like I don't know.
it's like express.
Yeah. we
Express
can
what?
Express our
Your
feelings and emotions.
What did you feel?
The feelings you feel. That's what defines whoever you are, right? In any given moment. You are a person right now because you feel something, whatever it might be. That is your humanity. You got a body and all that stuff, but like, we're talking about it here, yeah? And we're saying this upset this kid. Probably tremendously, right? And it didn't have to happen either, right? That's what's so fucked up about it. It didn't have to happen, but it did. My question is, what is this saying about that? That up here is kind of how we define whatever person you are. If you're a serial killer, it goes on up here first. That's who you are, right? What does this have to do with emotions, feelings?
Just basically saying it doesn't matter how you feel about the situation.
So, the other thing we're saying about rules. What's more important, rules or feelings?
Feelings.
But if you're this guy.
Oh, rules.
Rules. And we just talked about feelings, emotions. That's how we really define personhood. Yeah? If that all tracks, what's the relationship for this guy? Rules are more important than what?
Feelings.
Then your human rights.
People.
People that
Yeah, any of that. Yes. And again, to be fair to this guy, this is exactly what I would expect a ref to say. God. But this is interesting, okay? If we elaborate on that a little bit more, we're basically saying the ref doesn't even consider the personhood of this kid and how it may or may not be different from his experience of being a person, right? Which it seems like it probably is. He's a probably 50, 60 something year old white guy. This kid is not. I almost gave you the thought. I don't want to give it to you. But what we've begun to argue is that the ref doesn't do that, right? He tells us that. And again, to be fair to him, unfortunate as it is, that's okay given the context. That is kind of what refs are supposed to do, right? What we're trying to do in the paper a little bit, what this is trying to do, the reaction is saying, but that's not always correct. That's not always right. We're doing something wrong, basically. We got to figure out how to phrase whatever that is.
Wait, say it one more time.
I know, I say so many things. We've gotten to the idea that this referee's complete dependence upon the rules, which again, sounds like what a referee does, right? Basically gets into this idea. When he's out there refereeing wrestling or football or any sport, they're not seeing people, right? They're just seeing how rules apply, and that's what they use to determine whatever, okay? But in this specific case, I think this side would argue that maybe there should be exceptions to some rules, or there should be considerations, there should be, it can't always be rules are rules, perhaps. My question is, we gotta try to describe that in some kind of a way.
You could talk about the ref's complete apathy towards this person.
Yeah.
Like how it led to their bodily autonomy being violated.
Yeah, well that's what we got here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess what I'm asking, because we need to get to a point so we can make an argument, because again, our question is always, what does any of this say about us as a people, society, and culture, right? Given the conversation that's occurring between these two sides, there's one idea that's at the heart of the debate, if you could call it that, between these two things. What is that thing? We've said it many times, we just gotta say it one more time. Our argument hinges on one idea. When I ask you guys, what does it say about us as a people, a society, and culture? There's all kinds of ways to answer that question, okay? But usually it comes down to, what are we learning about ourselves in terms of our values, our priorities, our sort of societal opinions? Because we have those, you know? Like my boys occasionally ask my wife to paint their nails, which is kind of whatever. But it's also like I know the world we're in, and like last night we were at gymnastics, and some 7-year-old was to my 5-year-old was like, "Why are your nails painted?" Like it was one of those. I know inherently there's not a whole lot probably in the 7-year-old that is low-key homophobic, but like he's part of the society too. You know what I'm saying? Like we have those priorities. That is a general opinion we have. So that's what I'm talking about. When it comes to our social fabric and how it's made and the opinions we kind of hold or whatever, we're getting at something with both of these. Hold them up together. What are we saying about our, this is leading too much, perhaps our changing or our evolving opinion? If that makes sense.
Okay. Like, what do you say? I gotta make the sentence in my head
Oh, that's okay. If anybody else wants to jump in, yeah. Maya and Alexis have been doing a lot of the heavy lifting today, so.
Okay, what is it saying about our opinion
Because look,
in this?
I would imagine millions of people agree with this guy.
Yeah.
I would imagine millions of people agree with this guy. The idea we arrive at the end is that everyone's opinion is their own.
Yeah.
No. That's banal. I know everyone's opinion is their own. That's a semi-fancy way of saying people disagree. It's like, don't do that. Do not argue to me that people disagree. I know that. Right? We're saying something else. And it's hard to do, but we are saying it. We're trying to. Consider this. A referee, does anybody like refs? Have you ever met anybody that's like, that's really, God, I hate referees. I hate them always. Even if they're doing a great job, which doesn't seem like it's always the case. I'll admit my own bias there. But mostly because we're not there for that. We want to watch the game, right? We want to see what happens. And if they called a good penalty, you know, I'm like, all right, yeah, that's a face mask. I totally saw that. Yeah, fine. But half the time, it's like, God damn it, that's not pass interference. Like, get over it, right? Move on. We don't like authority figures, man. We don't like cops usually, at least if they're coming into your place and looking for stuff. Like, we don't want that because of this, right? Legal structures, that's what referees are. They're basically cops on a field, you know. Don't do this. But something in recent enough history has changed, has happened, that has us saying, but there should be exceptions. There should be some kind of change or some kind of realization, recognition that maybe this can't always apply. My question is, with the waning time we have, what might that be? Like, another way to put all that, why is everybody pissed off at this ref? That's an easy one, right? Why are they upset with him?
Because the boy had to cut his hair and they didn't take in consideration of his feelings and his humanity.
Now again, to play devil's advocate for a minute, I totally get where the ref's coming from.
Yeah.
If those are the rules, and I don't know New Jersey's high school wrestling rules very well, but I kind of feel like he knows it better than me. Okay. And yet, as a society, we kind of, it said in the article I read, he got suspended for like 2 years or something, and it was a whole thing. So like, we pretty clearly seem to less and less agree with this idea. Why? Maybe.
Because we're talking about the ref's idea or rules.
Yeah, just what he represents in this case, and yeah.
Because we as a society or whatever, we consider, as you said, how we take into consideration humanity in recent events or recent history in like the past years.
Mm-hmm.
Then, and especially in this situation, like, okay, we see more of the boys' perspective than we see the refs because of the humanity factor and considering the boys' feelings and the making him cut his hair or whatever. So,
Why? I'm not disagreeing. Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Well, the reason you don't know is because there are several possibilities. Okay? There's not just one. And that's the thing you guys all struggle with in this class. There's almost never one answer. There are bad answers. That's not, whoever told you there's no such thing as like a dumb question or dumb, that's not right. There's totally dumb things you can say. But, you got a couple possibilities. All I'm saying is, we gotta pick one. Why? Everything else you said was right. Why, in recent history, past 5-10 years, something like that, have we moved to a place where generally, I think we're more inclined to agree with Chance been the ref. Something has changed in terms of how we see the world or how we want the world to be or whatever.
Somebody help me.
I've been saying. Alexa's been trying, but she's clearly hurting. So like So part of what you said is, I don't know, now, I'll make it super argumentative. More than ever, never before have we done this. Now more than ever, we can never spell this word. That's a really fancy way of saying what you said. It's probably true about us. Here in 2022, and again, this is like a year or something old, but still, 2022-ish, that's probably an argument you could make about us, generally, right? And what you're kind of saying is, that's definitely this side's opinion, but it's also in the face of this side's opinion, which doesn't see people, right? Like that's not a question. And it's like, well, but you need to. We need to, at least in some cases, make allowances, try to understand why. What would seeing the kids' humanity in this case have helped? What about it might have changed things? I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of rope here. One argument you could make, I was gonna say with not a lot of pushback, but we both know that's wrong in 2022. I would imagine, given however old the rule book is, and you guys had social studies, right? You know about some things. There's a pretty good chance when the rules were written that black kids weren't allowed to wrestle. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is kind of the reality of the situation. So, given the context of what's going on, the hair this kid had wasn't even a consideration. Like, white dude hair, this is about as wild as it gets. Like, it's not, you know. So, what do we not, when we don't see people, when we don't acknowledge humanity, we miss something. And it's not feelings, by the way. That's baked in, that's part of it. But there's something else we haven't talked about. When this ref doesn't see humanity, what is he also not seeing? He's missing something that leads to him cutting this kid's hair. How do you also know you're human beings? You're not iguanas. Or blocks of wood, or lamps. I used to give you all kinds of nouns. How do you know you're you? How do you know you're Jaden and not Abby, and vice versa? How do you know? You must know, right? Or not. I mean, what? How do you know?
We look different. I don't know. Our bodies.
Yeah. So something about difference is important. Telling the difference.
Our skin, our hair.
Yeah. But here again, what really makes us different? I mean, yeah, we all look, but like, in a dark room, you can't see people. If you had a conversation and your voices were filtered, I would hope anyone who knows either one of these guys would go, oh, that's not Abby.
Your personality, maybe?
What about your personality?
Well, kind of like the way you present yourself, I guess.
Again, like tied to whatever you are, right? What makes you unique? The little snowflake, sunflower? Take a pick. Whatever thing you are, right? That makes you you. If rules are rules, we're not doing any of that. We're all the same. Is it a big part of the problem that we're not all the same? This kid's hair is different? The rules don't allow for that? Yeah. So what we're also saying, we don't, privileging a person's humanity, that's too big. That's what we're after. Yes, he's wrestling and they should all be held basically to the same rules. That's how you make it fair. But if you totally ignore this, especially in 2022, whatever, you're gonna make some fucking mistakes. Because I think the argument we're driving at is that we care very deeply about this. If nothing else, I need you guys to register. This is very different from people disagree. We see that, right? And again, I get it. Do people disagree? And is that pretty clear from this evidence? Oh yeah. But it's super clear from this evidence. It's banal. And because it does not require argument, that means it does not require analysis, which means you're not going to give that to me. That's going to be a problem. That's where you make your grade. And if you're not demanding analysis from yourself, you're not going to make it happen. Okay? And if you find yourself struggling, you're like, I'm just trying to, that's usually a good thing. That means you're working. I know it's not fun. I don't like it either. But that's when the good stuff happens, okay? And I gave you guys a little bit of language, especially toward the end, but this was your idea, right, that I wrote up here. Any questions about any of that? Because we always take way longer than I mean to. What time is it, by the way? I can only kind of see that.
10:37.
Woo! Okay. Like I can see the general shape of the hands. Okay. Any questions about this assignment? Not just about body paragraphs, introductions, any of that jazz.
I'm struggling kind of more to remain in like, sometimes like I'll end up using we and like remaining in, is that like,
Typically you don't want to do that.
Okay.
But in this particular assignment, it's very hard to avoid.
Okay.
So it's fine. That's fine. Yeah. I mean, I would still say avoid I at all costs.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to make it about you. But if we're talking about society, especially social media, you guys are more plugged in than I'll ever be. We, in many cases, is almost unavoidable. So that's fine. Other questions? That was a good one. Okay. To recap very briefly what we got going on. First class, and then I'll move to business stuff. I want to remind you, you may not always end up here, okay? All of you can do this stuff. All of you can do this. Use the language, okay? And we didn't even use all of it, first of all. Rules are rules, you have to follow them. This is not a racist issue. Clearly that tells you that that's part of the conversation, that people are calling this guy a racist. To be fair, because you have to try to be fair to a fault in a paper like this. Just based on what he says, I'm not going to accuse this guy of being a racist. I don't think he is. I think he might be kind of an idiot. Or at the very least, the job he has maybe demands that. But again, the point is, what are we acknowledging about us? Another argument could be, we didn't go this route, which I'm very happy about, is it seems like this guy is getting called racist based off of being in a hard position. Like, if that is the rule and that is what he has to do, what is he supposed to do in that situation? I've never been a ref, but like if I'm really trying to be fair to him, I think he's kind of fucked in that situation. Like, just given. But another argument that's present here is if we are super quick to call this guy racist in this context, that says something about us too. That's a totally different argument. I like this one much more. But that's present as well. And all I'm saying is whatever you come up with, you have to use the language, you have to. If you're not, you gotta reinvestigate that quotation, you gotta decide, well, what can I dig into? Some of the ideas that the student brought up, we totally are kind of diving into those, but we're using the evidence to do it. That's what you have to do, okay? Other thing I want to remind you about the paper, don't forget we talked about the introduction is a little bit different this time. Same structure, but you're going to have that section up top that's like 2 to 3 sentences what happened, 2 to 3 sentences what the response is. Then you'll get into the roadmap, which is what this stuff is, okay? Then you'll get to your thesis, then you'll get to your beautiful body paragraphs, right? That's how the paper works. Don't forget, we're excited. We didn't talk about it much this time. We might talk about it next time. I'll love that. You'll love that. Yeah. In terms of next time, your rough draft, that's when it's due. Turnitin.com next time. Today's Wednesday, which means you got the whole weekend, and I know you got lives and Halloween. When is Halloween? Monday?
Yeah.
That's hard. I say this in acknowledgement of holidays. Try to appreciate whatever your life is going to be. Oh, I'll get plenty of work done on Monday. Maybe not. Maybe not. I won't. I'm going to teach you guys. I'm going to teach my other class. I'm going to hang out with my kids all night. It's going to be great. It's going to be super life-affirming for me, by the way. I love it a lot. But I'm not going to get anything done. I have to know that about me. I got to make my schedule with that in mind. Do the same thing, okay? That's Monday. Your revision, if you want to, is due the 28th by midnight. It's Friday night by midnight. I understand it's right in the midst of this, but it's also due first. I recommend most everybody do it, you know? Again, take a swing. If it doesn't go well, you keep your original grade. If you do better, I'm gonna update your grade. It's worth a shot. And with that, I'll see you Monday. Thank you.